On the afternoon of June 14,
I thought you were
1969,
cool.
6-year-old Dennis Martin was
I'm
spending
sad now,
Father's Day
dude.
weekend with his
What the
family
hell?
in Great Smoky Mountains National Park. He was there with his father, grandfather, and older brother near Spence Field,
Let's just
a
watch
remote
this. It'll
high
be
country
nice.
area along the Appalachian Trail. It was supposed to be a simple family camping trip. Instead, it turned into
You
one
did,
of the most
Sky, but it looks
disturbing
good.
missing child cases in
think
American
you'll like it.
history. Late that
think
day,
you're gonna like the
Dennis and a
movie.
few other boys decided to play a prank. The plan was to hide along the trail, wait for the adults to come by, and jump out and scare them. To pull it off, the boys split up. Dennis went one way, the others went another. A few
Never let your children play in the woods. Yeah. We can already tell where this is going, but, this isn't a mystery. People just get turned around and die in the woods a lot. Your lady friend watches this guy? Oh, hell yeah. Check it out.
moments later, the other boys came back, but Dennis didn't.
Oh,
His
hell
father,
yeah.
Bill Martin, started calling for him almost immediately and began searching the area on foot. There was no answer. No movement in the brush and no sign of a little boy in a bright red shirt. And this was not easy terrain. Dennis had vanished in steep, heavily wooded mountain country where a child could disappear from view in seconds. If he had wandered off the trail, fallen, or gotten confused, the forest could have swallowed him almost instantly. As if things weren't bad enough already, they only got worse. Not long after Dennis disappeared, a hard rainstorm moved into the mountains. Heavy rain pounded the area, and whatever tracks or scent Dennis may have left behind were being wiped away
Yeah.
in real time. By nightfall, the temperature had dropped too. For a
Something
6-year-old
clicked for
dressed
you.
for a
Was it about
summer
children
outing,
disappearing?
not an unexpected night alone in the wilderness, this was a serious danger all by itself. Family members and rangers kept looking through the darkness, trying to find them before the mountains and weather made things even worse. By the next morning, the search had grown into something enormous. What began as a frantic
So what happens is people can't discern where they are, and they'll just march in a direction very far away from everyone. Is this a recent video or is it old? It feels familiar. This video was just released, like, very recently, like in the past few days. Or even today. I lost track of time the last few days because I was unconscious for most of it. I feel so much better, and then I woke up and immediately poisoned myself with cheese, but it's really good.
family search turned into a full-scale
Or you can see the
operation
mountain lights.
involving
Oh.
rangers, volunteers, Boy Scouts, horse teams, helicopters, National Guard members, and even Green Berets. Before it was over, thousands of people would take part. At one point, around 1,400 searchers were involved in a single day. More than 56 square miles were eventually covered. And after all that, they still found nothing physical to indicate what happened to Dennis. There were leads, but none of them changed the case. For example, small footprints were found in the area and appeared to belong to a child. They seemed to head toward a stream and then disappear. They were Oxford prints, and because Dennis was wearing the same kind of shoe, the prints drew immediate attention. But officials decided they were instead probably left by a Boy Scout helping with the search. As the days passed, darker theories started to take hold.
Well-
The most famous came from a man named Harold Key, who claimed he heard a terrible scream not long after Dennis vanished. Soon after that, he said he saw a rough-looking man moving quickly through the area with something red slung over his shoulders. Dennis had been wearing a red
Did he kill him? Did he kill him? That sounds like something where it's just like, oh my goodness, I saw the devil and he, yeah, that kid was being taken by the devil. I don't know. That's, okay, sorry, okay, sorry.
shirt, so the account naturally drew attention.
Just sounds
but
a bit
there seemed to be a
suspect.
problem. The timeline and distance did not quite fit well enough. Investigators believe the man Harold described was too far from the place Dennis had last been seen, and too little time had passed for the sighting to make sense. Both park rangers and the FBI ultimately concluded there was not enough to connect the account to Dennis's disappearance. Still, the abduction theory never really died. Dennis's father believed his son had been taken, and a lot of people understood why. A child vanishes in broad daylight, and an enormous search follows, yet not one trace of him is ever found. Officials, however, lean toward a different
That's pretty
explanation.
normal, though.
They believe Dennis most likely became lost and died somewhere in the wilderness soon after disappearing. It is the least dramatic theory, but it may also be the most likely. An animal attack has also been suggested over the years, usually involving a bear or feral hog, though that theory has always had its own problems. No blood was found, no torn clothing, no obvious sign of a violent encounter. By June 29, the active search was called off. The volunteers were exhausted, leads had dried up, and the mountains had given up nothing. Dennis Martin was never found. Scott Lilly.
It is
Scott
very
Lilly
easy
was
for people to, unfortunately succumb to, like, either injury or just dehydration if they're out in the wilderness. Honestly, I'm not saying the parents did this. They couldn't have known that that was going to happen. There were a lot of kids there, and they were all generally looking after each other. Probably better just to have, like, your child on a leash if they're that young, like, in a place like that. Like, you could, if you need to do something, I don't even know. Makes me think of the old gods of Appalachia. That is yeah. I like the concept of a lot of stuff with Appalachia as well when it comes to, like, very spooky and intense stuff. The dude that was worried about the 30 to 50 feral hogs had a real point buried in there? I think so. Apparently, like, hogs can just, like, start running around and going crazy, like, if they're in big enough groups. It sounds very funny, though, to anyone that's not, like, in a rural area, just like, oh, he's psychotic. You imagine the hogs. Yeah.
not the kind of person most people would expect to see tackling the Appalachian Trail. He was not some hardened outdoorsman or seasoned long-distance hiker. But in the summer of 2011, the 30-year-old from South Bend, Indiana decided to shoulder a backpack and head south on one of the most famous footpaths in America. Part of the appeal was history. Scott had a strong interest in the Civil War, and that helped draw him toward Virginia, a state dotted with battlefields. But this hike does not seem to have been just about scenery or history. It appears to have been something more personal, a way to clear his head and work through whatever was weighing on him at the time. On June 15, 2011, Scott set out on an ambitious journey. His plan was to hike the Appalachian Trail southbound, from Maryland all the way to Springer Mountain.
Just as a quick aside, I think all of these stories are going to be about people that just die in the wilderness. I don't think it's going to be like anything too crazy. I don't think it's going to be like paranormal or supernatural or anything. I think it's just going to be they die in the wilderness. Like, that's the vibe I'm getting at this point. It is still very sad, but I don't feel like these are mysteries. It's like the way they presented the last one, it was just like this kid wandered off. I do think it's possible they could have been kidnapped, though.
In Georgia. For someone
this guy
who was
was
still
abducted by
relatively
Civil
new
War
when it
loving
came to
aliens.
hiking,
No!
This was no small undertaking. But by the time he reached Virginia, he seemed to be doing just fine. He had made his way into the mountains of Nelson County and taken on a stretch of trail near the Priest, a rugged area where the Appalachian Trail climbs above 4,000 feet.
Oh, that's pretty.
By then, he may have felt like he had found his rhythm. Then, somewhere around July 31, things went quiet. That was the last point at which anyone is known to have seen or heard from Scott. What investigators believe is that Scott may have been heading toward Cow Camp Gap Shelter, a well-known community-used simple wooden structure along the trail. That would have made sense. The Cow Camp Gap was a logical next stop on his journey. From there, he may have planned to continue into Buena Vista, a small town along the trail with supplies. If that was his...
I just want to say it's so cool they've kept this up for like 200 years now. Like, this is something where people keep the upkeep of like this little specific structure and make sure people have a place to stay. That's really cool. I would assume that someone would stab me to death in it, but you know, for 200 years, I think that's when the Civil War was. Something very simple and sudden can happen, like tripping and falling into a ditch can be enough to kill you in the forest, even as an adult. Yeah, if you like lose your ability to walk and stuff. Hiking cabins are still common in some places. Yeah, I've seen some information about them. 200 years would predate the Civil War significantly. Oh, 160 years. Okay, 160 years. 160 years ago.
Plan, there was nothing unusual about it. That is how life on the Appalachian Trail works. Hikers move from one shelter area to the next.
Cool.
And sometimes, because everyone is spread out and moving at their own pace, people disappear from each other's view for hours or even days without it seeming alarming at first.
Cool.
It is a very isolating place. So, for a while, Scott's absence may not have looked like a crisis. But somewhere in that ordinary gap, something went terribly wrong. On August 12, 2011, nearly 2 weeks after Scott was last known to be on that stretch of trail, a group of hikers made a horrifying discovery near the side trail leading to Cow Camp Gap Shelter. They found a body in a shallow grave. It was Scott Lilly. Right away, it was obvious this was not a simple wilderness death. Someone had tried to hide what happened to him. Not very well, but enough to delay discovery. Investigators believed Scott had likely been dead for around 12 days by the time he was found. That meant he had probably died not long after the last known stretch of his hike near the Priest in late July. And the location only made the case more unsettling.
How did I think this guy was from the Civil War?
Cow Camp Gap was not some foreign corner of the mountains. It was part of a well-used recreation area. Hikers...
Okay, my brain is shut off because I could have sworn this was a Civil War general. He loved the Civil War? Okay, he was a Civil War reenactment person. I thought he was actually from the Civil War. He has the look. He does have the look. Her brain is gone. Yes. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Passed through it. Campers even used it. It was secluded enough for someone to hide a body, but not so remote that no one would ever come across it. That meant whoever put Scott there either took a major risk or felt comfortable doing it. Months later, investigators released one of the case's most disturbing details. In January 2012, the medical examiner officially ruled Scott's death a homicide. His cause of death was asphyxia by suffocation.
What?
Some of his belongings were also missing and never recovered. Among them were his backpack, his...
This is why you can never go in the woods. Okay, even if you're a fella, even if you're 8 feet tall, even if you're a big bearded guy like that looks very intense, I guess someone could just decide, hey, random guy, I'm gonna kill him. In the middle of nowhere. This is why you don't want to travel across the states. I mean, the states can be very beautiful. There's a lot of really lovely places. Even if you were a Civil War general. Even if you were a Civil War general, which I don't think had anything to do with anything going on in this specifically, but if it did, that would be very interesting, wouldn't it? Yes. You would never travel alone with someone you just met? Yeah, it's unfortunate, but there's absolute sickos out there. There's absolute sickos, and they're not going to be as polite or friendly as you are, even if you do have the means to fight them.
Relatively new trail shoes, a Nintendo game, and an Appalachian Trail handbook.
Who's
that
the content
immediately
creator you
raised the
speak of,
obvious
Grimmi?
question.
I'll get a link in a second.
Was Scott killed for his gear,
Wait, which one?
or
There
were
were
those
like
items
4.
taken for some other reason entirely? Investigators never publicly gave a clear answer. Virginia State Police
And Vesper,
and
I'm
local
very
authorities,
happy for you. I'm very
agents
excited.
and officers collected more than 100 pieces of evidence.
Voices
They
of the
covered
Void
more
is one
than
of my favorite games.
270 miles of trail. They conducted 83 interviews of hikers in the area at the time across multiple states and even in 2 foreign countries.
Whoa.
1 year after Scott's murder, the FBI even announced a $10,000 reward for information leading to the arrest and conviction of his killer.
Whoa!
But despite all of that, the case never broke open. No
You
suspect
apologize?
was
No, you're
publicly
fine, dude.
identified, and no final timeline was established.
You can
It
backflip.
was never
Good for
found
you.
out exactly what happened to Scott Lilly in his final hours
I'm gonna
on
get
the
in
trail,
shape, too,
which
and do some
sparked much
backflips.
speculation. Some
I
seem
gained
to paint the
15
area
pounds
around
watching
Cow
these
Camp
cats.
Gap as an area crawling with
stressed.
dangerous mountain recluses or hidden predators waiting just off the trail. But
They're good
that
cats,
image does
though.
not really hold up. This was a well-used area and not some lost world cut
I'm
off
gonna
from
walk
everybody
to
else.
Canada.
And that may be one of the creepiest parts of all.
Not actual
He
Canada.
disappeared along a route hikers used all the time. Then,
I wanted to walk
somewhere
a
in
lot.
that stretch of Virginia
I have a desk
backcountry,
treadmill.
he crossed paths with the wrong person. And exactly what happened next has remained unknown
What
to
we
this day.
watching? A cautionary tale about why you shouldn't go outside. Indeed, you should not walk to Canada physically. You should walk to Canada in the comfort of your own home.
Derek
Come on.
Lueking.
I appreciate
Before
it.
Derek
How you
Lueking
doing?
disappeared into the Great Smoky Mountains, a section of the
I mean, that would
Appalachian
keep the organs
Mountains in
fresh.
March
I just was wondering.
2012, the people closest to him had already
Would you even
started to
feel
feel
it?
like something was
Depends.
wrong. In the months leading up to his disappearance, his father noticed changes in his 24-year-old son. Derek had started
thought it
drinking
was
and
interesting.
smoking, which his family considered unusual for him. He also seemed unhappy with where his life was heading. The mystery began on March 15, 2012, when Derek did not show up for work. No one could reach him as calls to his phone went unanswered. A mutual friend eventually alerted his roommate, Ryan, and from there the concern escalated fast.
Psychosis.
Ryan contacted Derek's family, and the Luekings drove through the night from Virginia to Tennessee. Once they arrived, they started digging through anything that might explain where he had gone. On Derek's computer,
Psychosis.
they found searches related to Great Smoky Mountains National Park. They also found a hotel reservation. That meant Derek had not just disappeared at random. He had made some kind of plan. And for whatever reason, that plan had led him toward the
Or
North Carolina
depression.
side of the Smokies. But
That's
why?
very nice of you,
That
Hydra.
was the
Thank
question
you.
hanging over everything from the beginning.
It could be
2 days
depression.
later, on March 17, surveillance footage captured Derek leaving the Microtel Inn and Suites in Cherokee, North
Depends on
Carolina
blood
at
type.
around
Are
4
certain
o'clock in
organs
the
better
morning.
for...
He was carrying only a day pack.
Sorry.
That was the
Chill,
last
Grimmi.
confirmed sighting of him. After that, Derek effectively walked out of view and never came back. Inside his hotel room were details that only made the case stranger. His family found a Bible on the bed and a liquor bottle on the floor. It suggested he may have been wrestling with something emotional, spiritual, or both. Later that same morning, around 8:30, Derek's white Ford Escape was found at Newfound Gap high in the Smokies, near the Tennessee-North Carolina line. His family came across it by sheer luck while searching for him. Inside the vehicle was a note. Its message was short but chilling. "Do not follow me." But despite this note, people did, because by that point the case no longer looked like a man taking a trip. It looked like a disappearance headed towards something much worse, and what investigators found inside the SUV only deepened the mystery. Derek had bought a surprising amount of outdoor gear. There were maps of the national park, a tent, a sleeping bag, food, cord, cutting tools, lights, and other survival items. It looked like the setup for a serious wilderness outing, but there was one major problem. Derek had left most of it behind. His wallet and cash were still in the car too.
I think he intended to not come
almost no
back.
sense. If he meant to survive in the backcountry, why walk away from the very gear that would have made that possible? This contradiction has haunted the case ever since. Maybe Derek only planned to take a short
There's
walk
photos
and
that show
return
you
for
what
the rest of
strokes
the
look like.
stop.
Yes.
Maybe he was trying to imitate the
Your brain
stripped-down
can try to
survival
like
style
process
of Man
things really
vs. Wild,
incorrectly.
a show his family said he liked. Maybe he never had a coherent wilderness plan at all. Or maybe someone else entered the picture
Kinda looks like
after
early
he
AI
arrived
stuff,
at Newfound
honestly.
Gap. Search and rescue teams soon moved into the area. About 60 people and 3 dog teams
What are the
took part,
chances
covering more than
alcohol
70
will
miles
cure
of
your
trail
depression?
around the parking
Zero!
area. They checked places where someone could have left the trail, pushed into the
Zero!
brush, and disappeared. Rangers asked if
Don't
anyone had seen
drink!
Derek, a young man
Zero!
matching his description, or anything unusual around Newfound Gap that day. And this is where the case gets even stranger.
Zero!
It was a sunny day. People were out hiking, picnicking,
I like
moving
those
through the
odds.
area, yet no dependable witnesses
No.
ever emerged to place Derek there. There was one possible sighting along Newfound Gap Road that suggested he may have entered the woods from there,
Harvesting
but
after
that lead
cardiac
led
death,
nowhere.
non-viable
Then
surgery
the
has a
case
shorter
took an even
timeline.
darker
Oh.
tone. Around the same time Derek vanished,
interesting.
another
So
young
it
man
can be done
disappeared
while
in the
you're
same
still
general area
technically
of the
alive.
Smokies. His name was Michael Giovanni Cacchini. Friends last saw him on March 18, 2012, just a day after Derek was last captured on surveillance video.
Huh.
During the search for Derek, rangers found Michael's abandoned vehicle parked along a walkway off Newfound Gap Road. It was an odd place to leave a car overnight, and not the kind of spot where someone on a normal hiking trip would be expected to begin a backcountry trek.
Good
Like
for you,
Derek,
Azaf.
Michael
Good
was
for
heavily
you.
searched for
But-
and not found during the initial effort. Months later, a backpack and human remains were discovered in the park near the area connected to his disappearance. The remains were eventually identified as Michael's, giving one of the 2 disappearances a grim ending, but not a clear explanation.
You're being sarcastic, no worries. Zero! But thank you, Azaf, for the 100 bits. I'm glad you got out of that. So... It is weird that these guys went missing like a day away from each other, but like... It's kind of hard to like give you an idea of the scale of like this area. Like this could be like 50 miles away from like the point of view of the camera. This right here is probably like 50, 100 feet away from it. This area is huge. Yeah, I don't think that these two necessarily had anything in common with each other. I don't think they like met up. I don't think that there was any foul play. I think they just wandered into the forest at the same time.
The question of if the cases were related began to arise.
I don't think so.
But Derek's case continued to make no progress. Every theory seemed to hit a wall. One possibility is that he went into the wilderness on purpose and
Yes.
intended not to come back, whether to take his life or somehow start a new one in the woods. The note in his car
This
immediately
is also
points people
something
in
that happens
direction,
weirdly.
but even that theory has problems. If Derek meant to disappear
Some people do go and move into the forest, and disconnect from society.
in the mountains and possibly take his
You're
life,
okay.
why
You're
buy so
okay.
much survival gear first?
It's all
Another
good. It's all
theory is that he
good.
wanted some kind of
It's okay if
survival
you feel
challenge.
self-conscious.
But again, why even buy the gear then in the first place? Then there is the possibility of foul play. Maybe Derek meant to scout the area and return for the rest of his gear, and during that window
He
he
loves these
crossed
kind of
paths
videos.
with
Me
someone.
too.
Someone who had malicious intentions. Maybe the note was genuine, or maybe it was meant to mislead whoever found
feel
the
so
car.
sick from that sandwich.
But
It was
that
so
theory
good,
has
though.
problems too. There is no body, blood, torn clothes, confirmed witnesses, or any definitive sign
Also,
of an
thank you for the
attack or
posture check,
abduction.
V-Dogs. I
More
hope
than a
you're doing
decade
well.
later, Derek Lueking is still missing. Louise Chaput. Louise Chaput was the kind of person people remembered fondly. She was 52 years old, a mother of
she's
2,
got a
and
cute
by all
haircut.
accounts, deeply compassionate. She loved the outdoors, forests, mountains, and quiet places were where she found peace. So when
Aw.
plans for a hiking trip with friends fell through in November 2001, Louise did not cancel the trip. Instead, she decided to go alone. She packed up her silver Ford Focus station wagon, left Quebec, and drove south towards
Okay,
New
she
Hampshire.
could die.
Her destination
she
was
could be
Pinkham
killed.
Notch Lodge in the White Mountains section of the Appalachian Mountains.
I really
She
don't think
planned
you
to
should
spend just a
travel
few days
in
there
remote
and be back
areas
home
as
in
a
time
single
for
lady.
work on Monday, November 19. It sounded simple enough, but the place she was heading toward had a reputation of its own. Mount Washington is beautiful, but it's also notoriously dangerous. The area is known for brutal weather, lethal cold, and conditions that can turn deadly with almost no warning. Louise knew that. She had climbed Mount Washington before and had grown up hiking and skiing. She crossed into the United States through the state of Vermont shortly before noon on Thursday, November 15. By mid-afternoon,
Every one
she
of
reached
these
the
involves
visitor
going
center
into the
area.
wilderness alone.
Louise
Don't do that.
stopped in
Yes.
and asked where she could take a short walk to stretch her legs after the long drive. She wanted something easy and brief to
Why
kick
do a
off
lot
her
of these take
multi-day
place in
trip.
Canada? No,
Something
it's
she could finish
Appalachia.
before dark. The clerk directed her to
Wait,
Lost Pond
is the
Trail.
Appalachian
It was
stretching
just
into
across the
Canada?
road from the lodge, a major fact that makes her case so unsettling.
I don't think
Louise
so.
had not set out on some extreme backcountry adventure. This was just a short walk. But somewhere between that simple plan and the end of the day, Louise vanished. When she failed to return to Quebec and did not show up for work on Monday, alarm bells went off. Her boyfriend contacted authorities in New Hampshire and the search began. Their immediate thinking was the weather played a part.
I've heard Patagonia's
and
pretty
at
good.
first, that assumption made perfect sense. Louise had gone alone into a mountain region famous for harsh weather, steep terrain, and sudden danger. In late November, even a short walk can become serious if someone slips, gets turned around, or spends too long out in the cold. Everything about the setting pointed in that direction.
You can't
And
do it.
Searchers would soon find one important clue. Louise's silver Ford.
I think it's also very telling that these were like from a little bit ago. I think now people have a better, like, easier way of communicating with others if they go into the wilderness. Like, you now have like a lot of like resources if you need to like ping like rescue services. These are like older times where people didn't have cell phones even. Not that you'll always have service, but it's gotten a little bit easier to communicate with rescuers.
Focus station wagon was still in the visitor center parking lot. The search unfolded in exactly the kind of conditions that make the White Mountains so feared.
People still get stuck
Dozens
on Mount
of people
Washington?
from the New Hampshire
Oh.
Fish and Game, Mountain Rescue Services, Androscoggin Valley Search and Rescue, and the U.S. Forest Service headed into the area. They were met by high
a
winds,
whistle?
blowing snow,
Oh.
and bitter cold. Wind chills dropped
Whistle
well
probably
below
would
zero.
help.
If a missing person is injured or exposed in those kinds of conditions, every hour counts. But the
Also,
first
yeah,
day produced
Appalachian
nothing.
divorce maple.
On the second day,
Yeah.
the weather improved somewhat, and a helicopter from the U.S. Army National Guard joined the search from above. Still nothing. Louise seemed to have vanished into one of the best-known mountain areas in
Also,
New
I don't
Hampshire
even-
without leaving behind
I'm gonna be real with you. I don't think it's even if you're a lady or someone said if you're a lady or femboy, don't go into the wilderness. I think you could be anyone. One dude was just a random like 6 foot tall dude with a giant beard that got strangled to death. It's just very dangerous when you're not around anyone. You never know if you're gonna run into like someone absolutely crazy. Just don't go alone. Just don't go alone. Like half these people are just normal guys. Yeah, it's not a good idea. It's not a good idea. Always carry your Aztec death whistle when hiking. That would make people leave you alone, probably. I think very few people would want to help you if you had an Aztec death whistle and were using it. That would also make it so everyone within your general area would just, like, leave, though. Leave.
any clear explanation. And because of where she disappeared, most people naturally assumed the worst. She could have suffered a fall or succumbed to exposure. Maybe she got disoriented and was lost in the wilderness. Anything was a possibility, which made the search for her that much harder. Then, on the afternoon of Thursday, November 22, Thanksgiving Day in the US,
Repeat that,
the search
Grimmi.
came to an end. Members of the New Hampshire Fish and Game found Louise's body, and the location only made things stranger. She was not found far from where her car had been parked, close to the trailhead and only a short distance from a well-used area. At
I wanna
first,
say
the public
this.
details were limited, and in a place like that, most people still assumed the mountain had claimed another life.
Aaron,
But
yes.
2 days later, that assumption collapsed. The medical examiner ruled Louise's death a homicide.
Whoa.
Louise had been stabbed multiple times.
Whoa.
Everything about it was set up to look like a wilderness tragedy. A solo hiker, a dangerous mountain range, bad weather, but what looked like a missing hiker case turned out to be a murder, and no suspect was ever identified. More than 2 decades later, her
The bear
case
stabbed her?
is
No,
still
a human
unsolved.
stabbed her. That's really rough.
Trenny Gibson.
They about to go back to that.
1976, 16-year-old
Go
Trenny
check out
Gibson
Eggs.
went
I
on
hope you had a
school
wonderful
trip to
stream.
the Great Smoky Mountains with about 40 other students
She's
from
very
Meriden
fun,
High School in
talented
Knoxville,
artist.
Tennessee.
Always
She
does
was quiet,
relaxing ones.
well-liked,
Please go
and
check her
interested in
out.
plants. In school, she was taking horticulture and hoped to study landscape architecture.
Ooh.
A trip into the mountains was exactly the kind of thing she would have been excited about. The
Well,
group was
that's
headed
nice.
to Andrews Bald and Kuohi. The weather, though, was not great. It was damp, chilly, and poor enough that the trip could have easily been canceled. Trenny was also underdressed. She had left her coat behind in Knoxville and ended up hiking in a blouse, sweater, jeans, and tennis shoes.
Could name
Another
it in a
student,
result.
Robert
That's
Simpson,
possible.
loaned her his wool jacket. The students were told to stay on the trail, not go beyond Andrews Bald, and be back at the bus by 3:30 that afternoon. After they reached Andrews Bald and ate lunch, Trenny
Never go into the forest, never go outside. That's all this video has been. Never, ever, ever go outside. Never go outside. Never go outside. Never go outside. Bald. Never go outside. Bald.
separated from Robert at around 1:30 p.m. He later said she wanted to head back towards the bus while he stayed behind. As she made her way back, other students saw her along the trail. One girl walked with her briefly. Another group invited her to stop and sit down.
Get that fan art going for him. He would do well.
One student later recalled that Trenny seemed to be in a hurry. Then, at about 2:50 that afternoon, witnesses saw her walk a little further ahead,
bongos, which is
stop,
purple
bend
bongo.
down, and step off the trail to the right by herself. This was the last confirmed sighting of Trenny Gibson. When students got back to the bus around 3:30, it became clear something was wrong. Trenny was not there. Her teacher, Wayne Dunlap, started looking for her almost immediately. Another student searched too, but neither found anything. By around 4:30 p.m., rangers had been contacted and the case became an official missing person search inside the Appalachian Mountains. And the timing was awful. Evening was coming on and rain, fog, wind, and falling temperatures were moving in. The trails were slick with wet leaves and visibility was getting worse by the hour. Even so, those looking for her would find evidence that Trenny may not have been alone. Searchers found broken undergrowth near the place where Trenny was last seen. Nearby were 3 cigarette butts and a partially consumed can of beer, suggesting that someone else may have been in that area. The strongest lead came from the tracking dogs. After being given Trenny's scent, they followed it past the Koohai Tower lookout point and toward a spot roughly 1.5 miles away, where the scent then disappeared. Some thought Trenny may have moved toward the road rather than simply wandering deeper into the wilderness. The search grew quickly. Over the course of the broader search, roughly 756 people took part. And despite all of that, nothing conclusive was ever found. The FBI opened an investigation and looked at the possible sightings that were reported.
Sure thing, drink some water, hon. You'll feel better.
The dead ends didn't seem to make any sense. She was not alone in the deep wilderness. She was on a school trip on a marked trail in one of the most visited parts of the mountains. Then she stepped off the trail for just a moment and vanished. One theory is that she made it to the road and encountered the wrong person. Others believe someone around her that day knew more than they ever admitted. But nearly 50 years later, there is still no body, no proven crime scene, and no clear answer as to what happened to her.
I don't know what to say. That was a sad story that,
Thelma Melton. On November 25, 1981, 58-year-old Thelma Melton, known to her friends as Polly, went for what should have been an easy afternoon walk in the mountains. That day, Polly set out on the Deep Creek Trail in the Appalachian Mountains with 2 friends, Pauline Cannon and Trula Gudger. It was one of her favorite hikes, a familiar trail that was well used and easy to follow. The weather was warm, the creek was shallow because of drought, and the trail was busy enough that other hikers were often around. Nothing about the setting screamed danger. At first, the walk seemed normal and Polly was in good spirits. She had even made homemade spaghetti sauce before leaving and expected to be back later that day to finish the ordinary routines of her life.
That's nice.
About an hour into the hike, around 4 p.m., the 3 women reached the turnaround point and started heading back.
Disappearances in Yosemite. People get their skins burned off there.
Polly, who had been walking more slowly than usual earlier in the day, suddenly picked up speed. One of her friends even joked that they weren't going to race her. Polly turned, laughed, and kept going. It was the last normal moment anyone had with her. That sudden burst of pace stood out because Polly was not young. She was a heavy smoker and had high blood pressure. She was not the sort of person anyone would expect to suddenly power away down a trail for no clear reason.
She probably had a heart attack.
That is exactly what she seemed to do. She moved ahead of her friends, went over a rise in the trail, and disappeared from sight. At first, her friends were not alarmed. They assumed Polly was joking around or hurrying back to check on her husband, Robert, who was waiting back at the trailhead. But when they came over the same rise themselves, she was gone. Her friends still tried to make it fit an ordinary explanation. But when they got back, Robert said Polly had not returned yet. The situation changed immediately. By then, she had been out of sight for close to an hour, and one small detail would linger afterward. Just before she disappeared over the hill, her friend said Polly had paused and waved. It was such an ordinary gesture, the kind that means nothing in the moment until it becomes the last thing anyone remembers.
She was the skinwalker? I don't think so,
Her friends went back out to retrace the route. They asked other hikers if anyone had seen her.
You know what? Why not?
And that made the case even stranger. The Deep Creek Trail was popular and it was close to a parking area. It was certainly busy enough that someone should have noticed a woman like Polly if she had simply kept walking. By about 6 p.m., park rangers were contacted.
Why not?
And about an hour later, a formal search was underway. At first, searchers thought they had at least one useful detail.
I'm going to start believing
Polly's
in every
shoes had a
supernatural
distinctive line
creature
across the
possible.
sole
It'll
that
get
made
me
her
away
tracks
from
easier to
society.
identify. But
And
that
the
clue
profound
went nowhere
brokenness
almost
of it.
immediately. The trail was too busy and too many other people had passed through. Investigators couldn't even determine where Polly
Girls
had left
love
the
true
trail at
crime.
all.
Sometimes
Over the
it's about
weekend, the
other
search
stuff.
grew. Volunteers joined park
It's a beautiful
rangers,
channel.
bloodhounds were
Support
brought
them.
in, and the trail was
Every
closed.
video.
In the end, roughly 150 volunteers and 9 search dogs took part. And then came one of the strangest details.
Sure
in
thing.
the
Good
whole
job,
case.
honey.
When the dogs were taken to the point where Polly had been last seen, they reacted strongly. They picked up her scent.
I want to
but
believe
instead of
there's
carrying it down the
aliens,
trail
that there's
or off
big
into the
feet, that
woods,
there's
they circled
something.
the area and howled. It was as if the trail simply
I want to
ended where she
believe that
vanished.
Pentachoron
Searchers
has
found
pussies
no
on
path
his
away from the
home.
point or obvious
I want to
sign that she had
believe.
wandered into the forest. There was no evidence of a
I want to
struggle.
believe.
No clothing, no dropped belongings, nothing. Rangers also ruled out some of the more dramatic natural explanations. The temperatures were mild, so exposure was unlikely. Animals in the area were also not considered large
Ew.
enough to drag her out of sight. Later, once leaves began to fall and visibility improved, a helicopter surveyed the area from above. Still, nothing. The search continued for 5 days and officially ended on October 2. But the mystery only deepened once investigators started looking at Polly's life in the days before she disappeared. A pastor who knew Polly said she had seemed somewhat depressed after her mother's recent
They were
death.
doing a makeup
There was
tutorial.
also
This
an
would
issue with
triple
missing
viewership.
Valium, an anxiety
I don't think
medication.
men do that.
Robert told investigators that his prescription bottle was gone, raising the possibility that Polly had taken it. This opened the door to a different theory. Maybe she had been more depressed than anyone realized and she meant to harm herself. Or maybe she took the medication, became disoriented, and somehow wandered off in a way searchers never thought of.
I think
Some
that's
people
more
wondered
likely.
if Polly had arranged to leave voluntarily, an idea that was built around a few strange facts. She skipped a volunteer shift she was expected to attend. She reportedly made unusual phone calls preceding her disappearance. There was a parking area and a
Maybe
road
she
not
was
far
in
from where she
psychosis.
disappeared, and her sudden burst
Know
of
what,
speed on the trail
aliens?
could look less random if she was hurrying to meet someone. Months later, that theory
I'm just
picked
gonna
up one
start
more
saying
odd detail.
aliens.
A check made out to Polly was cashed in Birmingham, Alabama, where her family had roots.
Oh.
But even that lead went nowhere. Investigators never established who cashed it. And if Polly really had chosen to run off and start over, she did it in a way that required abandoning her medication, identification,
Maybe she covered
clothes,
herself in leaves and
everyone who
laughed the
knew
whole
her.
time. Yeah.
Her family believed that sounded nothing like her. Then there's the possibility of foul play. Her family seemed to lean toward this idea. Polly was walking alone while wearing jewelry, and she
Why
disappeared
don't people
near a
have
road
cute
and parking
haircuts
area.
like that anymore?
In theory, she could have been lured away, forced into a car, or picked up by someone. But that theory has its own problem. Deep Creek Trail was public and busy, open enough that an attack or abduction should have drawn attention. And yet, no witness ever came forward with
It's
a
a big
convincing
place,
story
though.
of seeing Polly attacked, robbed, or taken. Polly Melton was declared legally dead in 1988, and her family eventually held a memorial for her. But the National Park Service still lists her as
She's
missing.
playing the wildest
and more
game
than
of hide
4
and seek.
decades
Hell
later,
yeah,
the
brother.
mystery has stayed the same. A woman on a familiar trail walked ahead of her friends, waved once, disappeared over a rise, and was never seen again.
There we are. I think what we can all take away from this is never go into the woods. And we need to get bus routes to people in the middle of nowhere. I think that's it. Never go out into the middle of woods. Never do that. But we do need to get bus routes out there so they stop being rural. Let's get bus routes everywhere. Let's get them everywhere. Let's get them everywhere. Public transport is socialism. I don't know. It's better than Amazon not paying taxes for the 10th year in a row or whatever. I think they should pay a little bit of taxes and we can get some bus routes going. Come on. I'm all right with a little bit of socialism. Just a tiny bit. Just a tiny bit as a treat. You can't get lost in a parking lot, pave it all. There you go. We need roads, I believe. We need nice big parking structures pretty much everywhere. So, the auto industry hates public transportation. Then let's get roads. Let's get roads. She was having an affair and ran away. I don't know if that's the case. I don't even know if she was married, was she? We don't know. It sounds like maybe someone attacked her, they took her checkbook, but like the thing is they already said that lead was like looked into, it didn't connect to it, so we don't know. She probably just wandered off. You're gonna get lost in the Florida swamp? Don't do that.